What's going on, RV owners? Today I am going to be showing you how to adjust your cable slide room. That is, of course, if you have an Accu-slide. There are a few different types of cable slide rooms, Accu-slide being one of the more popular over the years. And it's going to be determined by the motor that you have in the middle, which you may not be able to see without removing the fascia, as well as the chains along the top of the room like this. That's going to be an Accu-slide. This slide should be kept in adjustment at all times. Should check on it from time to time, maybe once a year, look at doing an adjustment. And today I'm going to break that down for you and show you just how easy it can be with very limited tools and an even smaller skill set. It doesn't take a whole lot to get this done. Now, before we begin this adventure, clearly I've already got the top fascia of my slide room off of this room because we just replaced that motor up there. When you do this, you may have access to your motor and adjustments, you may not. For instance, this one did have a little access cover that actually sat right in front of the motor, which would be great if you were just trying to get to the override, but you need to get to those adjustment blocks. And with the fascia on this room, it was sitting up here. I had about that much space to get up here. On some bigger fifth wheels, you may have more space, but if you do have to remove the fascia, be reminded that it's simply the decorative parts of it, just pull right off. You can use a little pry bar. It's usually just finish nails that hold that on. And then the actual piece of wood fascia that attaches here, as you can see, is just a couple screws to take that off. Now first I'll go over the obvious. When is it time for an adjustment? Now the obvious being, you have cables sagging on the inside or outside. That's usually where you'll notice it, is on the outside of the room. You'll have those cables sagging and flopping around. A lot of times it's pretty obvious. You can have these cables sagging. Sometimes it's not so obvious that it's the cables or an adjustment that's an issue. You may have a view of the side of your room and you might see that the bottom is kicked in and the top is nice and sealed, or vice versa. The bottom might be sealed and the top might have a gap. If you look over at these adjustment blocks at the top, this is the cables that pull the room in from the outside, and you'll see bottom and top. So you have individual adjustments for that stuff as well, to either grab the top and bring it in or bring the bottom out. You can make all those adjustments, and once I explain how all this works, that will seem like a lot less to consume. Really, you're trying to just go for tension in the cable. You're not necessarily going to be taking a bunch of measurements from the outside or anything. Some people like to explain it like that, but it just makes it way too overcomplicated. First things first, we're going to get the room all the way out until our room is snugged up with the wall, and we don't want to go overkill and wait for it to amp out. And as you can see, we have our ends very, very loose. And if they are not loose, you are actually going to want to loosen those, because again, we're doing the outs right now. Now, on this block here, you're going to have a center little nut here. That's going to be a 7/16, and these smaller ones are going to be 3/8. Now, while I'm doing the outs, I want the ends to have a lot of play and slack, so I'm actually going to go ahead and loosen this in right here to get this to sag a little bit more like that other side. So we're going to need that 3/8 wrench or socket, and you're going to need a pair of vice grips or some kind of pliers, because you're going to want to hold on to the ends of these cables while you're turning any of these nuts so that you don't twist up the cables. Try and get you a better view there while I'm also trying to get a view. I also just noticed some great irony here, is that the sticker telling you how to use this slide room and adjust it is actually up here. I don't often see the actual sticker up here, so kudos to the manufacturer for actually sticking that up there. But those are just words, they're hard to understand. So this cable is the one I'm going to be loosening, and as you can see, I'm going to go ahead and get a grip on that, and we are going to just loosen this until we have a bunch of slack on the one labeled in. Alright, now that's nice and loose. As you can see, we have that flop there. Now my out one, I definitely have some slack, but that's what we're going to be adjusting here to begin with. So now that we have the ins on both sides drop down, we know we're ready to set our out point. And for that out point, you can see we have one cable that has a bit of tension to it. That's the bottom. But our top is loosey-goosey. So loose, in fact, that I can hand tighten a large majority of that and get that out of the way. Now, as you can see, if I were to tighten that until this cable had some tension, we're way off here. That's where I have this center adjustment to actually bring the chain in. So what I'm going to do to make sure that I don't max out here is I'm actually going to loosen this top one a bit, and then I'm going to tighten up this center one right here to bring that closer to the chain. So again, before we tighten that center one, I'm going to loosen this top one and give myself some play here. Now that I've created some play there, we're going to need a 7/16 to get at that center one right here. And we're going to tighten this up. So we got some of the play out of it. You know, we moved at least an inch out. We do have plenty more, but that'll start getting too tight on this cable. You're going to have times where things are not going to look even. You're going to have some of that threaded rod sticking out here and maybe not here. The goal is to make sure this is nice and straight and that both of the cables are tight. It's not about being visually appealing. It is about actually being functional. I know it seems a little wild, but some of these cables stretch from time to time and they're not all going to be the same length, and it's just something that you got to get out of your mind, is that, you know, you're trying to get all of these things to look equal and whatnot, because you're simply not going to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and start tightening this cable here that says top. Again, we're going to make sure that the cable is being held by a pair of pliers or channel locks. And now we've got that bottom one tightened up, which is actually for the top cable. You can see we have nice good tension between the two, but how do you know when to stop? When is the adjustment right? Well, you can go off of the seal of the wall and make sure you have a nice even gap from top to bottom, and make sure that the seal is making contact. That's one good way to make sure your adjustment's there. Now, you would think that going outside to check the cables that are sagging would be the right way, but those are actually your in cables. Now, while we're checking the out, again, you can check to make sure that the room is sitting flush up against the wall and has good tension. You want about a ½ inch of play there within the cable under good pressure. The ½ inch of play thing is strange because, like, I'm much stronger than some people and someone might be stronger than me, so some people might call this 2 inches, but with normal finger force you should have about a ½ inch of play. Now, the other thing that you can check is you can grab either the top or the bottom cable, give it a tug and see if the room moves at all, or if it's trying to shift or try and pull itself closer to the wall. If it does, like let's say I grabbed the bottom and I were to pull it and then the bottom of the room was trying to suck back in, I would know I still have some adjustment there, so I would tighten up my bottom some. So these two right here, nice and tight, not too tight, and my fascia along the side of the room here, my seal is 100% sealed against the wall, nice and even, so I know this side is within perfect adjustment now. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the same thing on this side, again, to the out block. You don't want to mess with the ins yet, and you want to make sure the end is nice and loose over here while we're doing this. Also, in the beginning of this video, I did not mention these little foam blocks that you're going to find over the adjustment nuts on these blocks here. Do not throw these little foam blocks away. These are actually to help prevent these two from clashing with each other and that nut backing off or them catching at each other. These actually serve a purpose, so don't toss these. So now looking at this block, the bottom and top of my room are both sealed against the wall pretty well. Bottom cable is kind of loose, top one is way over tightened, and you can see that here. So we're going to go ahead and loosen up this, what should be the bottom cable here, as you can see labeled bottom, BTM, or top. We're going to loosen this one and tighten up this one a bit. Try and even out this block and see if we can't create even tension, because again, our seal over on the other side of the room is sealed up nice, so it's technically in a good adjustment, but we just need to kind of flip-flop the tension from the top of this cable to this cable. And we're going to do that the same way we've been doing it on every other one. Going to get a pair of channel locks or good gripping pliers on the cable, and we're going to go ahead and loosen that. Now, something I'll warn you about before it happens to you, because it's about to happen to me. So you can see, still have a bunch of tension, but I can like finger turn this. It's because the threads have kind of gotten jammed in there, and eventually I'm going to go turn it and it's going to pop. just like that. I want to get that ahead of you before that happens to you and it scares the bejesus out of you, because I know working with cables can be scary. So I want to make sure you're ahead of that one. It's a very common thing. To this day, I don't care how many times it's happened to me, it will still catch me off guard when it pops, just like that one did. But you guys couldn't see my face because the camera's pointing at the block. So we're going to continue getting that one loosened up, and looks like it may even do that same thing again here. Oh, now we're going to get lucky. So I've gotten quite a bit of that tension out. Need a little bit more. I'd like to remind you guys too that there's not like a whole real big science to any of this. It's trial and error. You may not get your adjustment right on the first try. It may take you a couple tries. That trial and error will eventually get that room working right. And after you've done this a time or two, you know, because again, this is a regular maintenance, is adjusting this, you'll have it done in 20-30 minutes. So now you can see I've got that block evened out. It's not all crooked anymore. Might need a couple more turns on the bottom. If I come over here and I feel my cables, they both have really good tension and they seem to be about even. Again, if anything, that bottom could maybe just use a couple more turns. Alright, we're looking even now. Everything's good. Nice and straight here. Both cables have good tension. If you look over here at this side of the room, you will see that we are nice and flush up against the wall. Sometimes these little trim pieces can trick you because they might not be perfect. You don't always have to take the sides off. There are some times when you may have to remove some decorative fascia so that you can see properly to make the right adjustment. So now that my out points are set, we can start working on the in. Before we do that, remember we have those foam blocks. Those are important. Those are going to go back over the top and bottom here. You're also going to have a lock nut or jam nut right here that you're going to want to tighten, because this is going to keep your cables from coming out of adjustment again. You're going to want to tighten that, and that's going to keep all this together. And then again, those foam blocks just need to get slid right back over those adjustment points. And that's done right there. But now that we have the outs set, we can start dealing with these saggy ins, and we're going to do that the same exact way we did the outs. So just like we did for those outs, we're going to get that slack out of here. Most importantly, making sure that this adjustment block is straight and it's not crooked or cockeyed, because eventually that's going to cause it to twist and it will start grabbing that other one. Now this one, because we have plenty of play here on the chain adjustment, we're going to tighten that up and get that play out of there. So that's where we'll need a 7/16 wrench, and we're just going to tighten away on that one until we get all that play out of there. As with the outs, once we have that adjustment set, we can make any final adjustments here if this is still crooked using these top and bottom ones for the cable. But after that, we're going to tighten up the jam nut here. That is what's going to stop this thing from twisting and coming out of adjustment. And for that, you are going to need that 7/16 again and tighten that up. If you can turn it with your fingers, it is not tight enough. I like to take the wrench and almost grab it from the outside here like this, and eventually swing it around. You'll get it. It's a bit of a pain, again, trying to get a wrench in that little spot, but you can't get a socket on it, so that's what works. We're going to come over to the other side and make that exact same adjustment that we did on that side. And again, we're going to focus on making sure this is straight, get these top and bottom nuts tightened, make sure everything's straight, and then clearly we're still a little sloppy here. So we're going to go ahead and tighten up that chain nut like we did the other one, create a little bit more tension, and then tighten up that jam nut. So now we have those ins and outs set. You should have coming about 6-8 inches in, 1/2 inch, 3/4 with a typical squeeze on all of those. All of your blocks should be nice and straight up and down like that. Jam nuts locked. Once you've got all that done, you can go ahead and again add those foam blocks back. get everything tidied up here. Check both sides. I usually run the room in and out a couple times and then I'll make final adjustments. I recommend you do the same because things may change after the first time you open or close it. But again, we're just checking for that tension, making sure everything's good. And one more check that you can do as well is going outside. And on the outside, what you're looking for is obviously no sagging cables, but with regular finger strength, which is a terrible measurement method because everybody's hands are different. You want about a 1/2 inch of deflection in that cable. Don't need it to be guitar string, you know, in doing that. This one is actually, in my opinion, still a little bit loose. This is going to be the bottom in. The cables out here are your in cables. So if this one's loose, I'll go inside and tighten the bottom in a little bit. And if that one were loose, I'm going to tighten the top in cable. Same thing for the other side. If these are a little loose, it's your bottom, that's your top. And since both of those are equally just as loose, I can actually take this in block and just take this center one, the chain adjustment, and put a little bit more tension on both of those. That's what I meant by you might be playing around with it for a little bit. Get it right, and then again, after your first time doing this, it's going to be easy peasy. Something you should be doing once a year or so, or as needed once you determine the room is sitting crooked, things don't seem right, or those cables are just sagging down and hanging everywhere. If you guys have any more questions about cable slides or something that you'd like to see a video on as far as adjustment or repairs, leave it down in the comments below. I'd be happy to make that video for you guys. And if you guys like this video and you want to see more like this one, make sure you guys press that subscribe button.